everybody, and welcome back to Break Time Conversations, a YouTube channel where I have conversations with people in the education space. I meet so many interesting and inspiring people every day, and so I have decided to document my conversations with them here so that all of you can hear their stories too. I'm here today with a very special Shweta Guhan, who is, among many other things, the co-founder and director of Key Education Foundation, a not-for-profit that works in the area of early childhood education. I find this so interesting, Shweta, because I'm an early years trained educator, so I understand how important this is. But there are so many people who don't, so I'm so intrigued to know how you got into this area. What convinced you about focusing on the early years?
Sure. Thanks, Hanupa. I think that's one of my favorite questions to answer while I'm advocating for getting more people into this space and excited about it. You're probably one of the first people I spoke to who was professionally trained as an early educator when we started KEF like 5 years ago. And I wasn't professionally trained as an early educator, so it was a lot to unpack. But kind of getting into it, so I started out my career in the education and social space in a sort of roundabout manner. Most of us who've had the privilege of a family that is kind of backing your education, taking care of you, being able to get a good schooling and college. However, the generation we came from, I think along with that came the general pressure of choosing what you want to do in college. And honestly, the options we were given was engineering or medicine. And I chose engineering. I was a very academic child. I enjoyed exams. I still enjoy them. We will save that for another conversation. But so overall, I think I did my engineering, worked for about a year and a half. And there was something that was kind of making me feel like I want to do something more meaningful. It was kind of something in the back of my head, never really something I thought I should act on. I did a lot of volunteering, teaching over the weekends because I had a family that was fairly socially active. And on a whim, I saw an advertisement for Teach for India in the paper in 2011, and I kind of jumped in, applied, and that's where the journey really began. So it's about 10 years now since I've been in the education space. I moved from Bangalore to Pune, taught grade 4, 120 wonderful children for a period of 2 years. I left the fellowship wanting to work in teacher professional development. I think the one thing that really stuck with me was, as a fellow, I still had so many opportunities for professional development. I watched myself grow. I was able to innovate in my classroom. I knew I had to go and look for practices. I knew how to look for best practices to come and try out, and kind of the idea of being creative came very naturally to us. But there were teachers in my school who had been teachers for 20 years with far more experience than I had or I would have in the years to come. But they had never had professional development that was meaningful. They didn't see their jobs as important. And when I finished the fellowship, I felt like this was something that really spoke to me. And I also realized that no teacher would want to listen to a 25-year-old engineer. So I went on to do my master's in education at Tata Institute in Bombay. And that's when I kind of got exposed to the theory of education, right? And that's when you break it down. And it was my first exposure to early childhood education. I started reading about it. We realized, I had to kind of expand my view from a classroom to the state of things, global affairs in ECE, what was research looking like. And it's so intriguing, right? All of us think of ECE as ABCD, a couple of rhymes, stories, fun stuff, play. But when you get deeper into what play means and what play can do for a young child, it's science, it's neuroscience, it's global development, it is what you're building into citizens all rolled into one. And it's telling you how blocks and simple things like playing with clay can do that for children. So I started getting excited about it. It took about 3 years of having conversations around early years, working in other organizations, and realizing when you work with children who are 13, 14, and you're bringing extraordinary opportunities to them, and in spite of that, they can't access it. They don't have the basic literacy, numeracy, or the social emotional resilience to work in teams, explore something, stick to it, and have the grit to kind of see something through. The answers to why is this problem coming in? Why are we always firefighting in the social sector to bridge the gap? And from a very selfish point of view, it was how do we make this difference? And how can I see meaning in the work that I do that brought me to the early years? I had a partner who also was working with the youth at that time and would come back with very similar arguments saying, I can't put my finger on it. I'm doing everything, but I don't know where we drop the ball. Why can't I do more for these kids? And we realized maybe the answer is in working with them much younger, much sooner, and not just working with them, but working with the ecosystem around them. So what was exciting for me was it's about working with schools, teachers, communities, and parents. And you kind of build this space that is conducive for the child in the early years, right? It's not about teaching them or getting them the right books. And that for me was very exciting as someone who works in product development. And that's how KEF, Key Education Foundation, began. The first person we approached was you saying, hey, we want to work in your schools. And 5 years hence, we are still here today.
Thanks, Shweta. I really love what you guys do because apart from, of course, focusing on early years, which I find so special, but also that you include the parents as well. I really love that because there are not many programs that actually include the parents or nothing that I have come across. So how did you, come to that? That I've always found that interesting. How did you decide to include the parents as well?
So when we were, initially we weren't very sure, right? So we said the first year of work for us was about understanding the problem. So we only worked with 5 schools and about 1,000 children between the ages of 3 to 6. And the first thing we also did, which most people do, is let's take the curriculum in. Let's bring in activities, give children materials, facilitate an activity-based experience in the school. So I brought in all of the best resources and put it into the classrooms. I was comfortable with teacher training, so we built out a model and did that. It worked. It worked very, very well in schools. Kids started enjoying themselves. Teachers started realizing they can let go. And we hit a roadblock in less than 3 months. We had teachers telling us, we love what we do, but we don't have the control to continue doing this because parents are not comfortable with just sending their children to school to play. We had school leaders saying parents will pull their children out of school because the argument was, I'm not paying fees if my child is not going to write their ABCs and numbers. I want my child to recite 1 to 200. There were studies, right? So when we started saying, why are parents so worried about this? We found even research studies across 9-10 states telling us that the biggest ask from parents is 4 pages of homework a day for their 4-year-old. And that is how a parent evaluates what a good school is. So then when you really realize that we always knew early childhood is kind of a fluid experience between home and the school environment where children spend their time. But our work with parents is with a slightly narrower objective. What we said is, can we help parents identify what indicators of quality are in early childhood education? Can the parent and the school build a relationship instead of one of blaming each other or avoiding each other? We see both of those, right, playing out. Either it's your fault my child can't do something, or you can't take care of your child well. Or I would rather not have parents come into the classroom at all. I'd rather let me do play and I won't show the parents I'm doing play. So how do you make that a dialogue and a conversation? Because everybody they have the best interest of the child in their heart. You just kind of need to make them realize that and give them a space to have that conversation. So that's how parent engagement started. So initially it was a bunch of workshops. It was kind of speaking to the parents, enabling the teachers in how to have a conversation with parents. How a parent-teacher meeting need not be about ticking off the marks cards and getting a signature, right? How can a teacher identify 2-3 things about the child that she can talk to about the parent? So it was very low-hanging fruit. It took a while in terms of, we saw the impact because we believed in it. But it's very hard to show somebody else that parent engagement actually has an impact. because we're not talking about children doing better. We're talking about parent-child interaction improving. I found a very nice language to use for this when the Harvard School of Education started backing this idea and came up with the idea of a serve and response. And they started talking about how parent-child interaction at home can be improved just by using simple frameworks like this, right? They use the tennis analogy, but really when a child communicates, are you able to identify that the child is reaching out and have a better understanding of your own context to be able to respond without, the stress that you are under or all the problems that you have in your life. And for marginalized communities, that started working. So when we started using tools to look at it, it was all very incidental. So parent engagement has been like, we've kind of gone a full circle, come back and said, okay, some of these things work. So when we found the tools, we actually realized in less than 1 year, about 1/3 of the parents start responding, start realizing the value of quality, are able to care for their children better. And all this is from parents told us this in their own words. So that's when we said, okay, there is no way to work with the school without working with the parent, or work with parents without working in the school environment. So we kind of evolved a framework saying you have to have the school, the teacher, the parent with the child at the center to kind of make this sustainable. I mean, the day they don't need us is really the day that they've kind of figured out what works for them.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, because I also believe that if you have the parent on board, then everything's going to be successful. So I like to keep this conversation short, just because all of us have very short attention spans these days. So before we end, Shweta, can you tell me, what does holistic education mean to you, like in terms of this young child that you're working with?
Very deep question. And also I've been trying to not use holistic as jargon with our teachers, and I still end up doing it. But today, right, especially I'm going to probably look at this in the context of where we are today as well. When I look at, we've had a pandemic, we've had children in the pre-primary years haven't been to school for 18, 20 months now, and they're coming into schools, right? I've been seeing some very beautiful little examples of teachers, right? Like there's one teacher, I was thinking about her the other day, and I worked with her personally in one of the schools, and she said, the most important thing for me, Shweta, it's not, yes, I'll do your math activities and stuff, but the most important thing for me is to be present to receive each of my children, greet them personally in the morning, and I want to be there at the gate to say bye to them. And she would pick up each one. She had like 100 students, and she was the coordinator, and she would pick them up, say bye, get them to look at her. And I think today more than ever, that social emotional relationship, right? And looking at social emotional well-being of children in the early years, not so much at the level of building values, but exemplifying them for children to feel connected to safe adults in their life is the center pin of what I believe is essential as outcomes. Having said that, holistic education, I actually would love to quote the NCERT, because I actually think the way they've kind of put this together, right, in terms of saying, having language, giving children the opportunity to be creative, curious, appreciate art, having children naturally exercise their need to move, and just providing them an opportunity to use their whole body, their mind, their creativity at home and in school will give them a holistic education. So I actually would like to think of it in terms of a holistic environment, which will lead to holistic early education for children.
Thank you. That was brilliant. And sorry to suddenly spring that on you, because I've heard so many different, views on holistic education. I myself am also struggling with trying to figure out what it actually is. So I just wanted to hear your take on it. But thank you, Shweta. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope you and Mangal never stop doing what you do, and keep going and keep coming up with new, innovative and exciting projects. I know you always have something up your sleeve, and all the best for everything. And thank you once again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Anupa.
Bye, Shweta.